want to welcome everybody. I'm Susan Kokinda from Promethean PAC, and this is our first midterm boot camp for the critical year of 2026. Last year, we had a few smaller meetings, which was largely organized around some of our local organizations and people who have gotten our half-page flyer on the new Republican Party. But this is the first of 2026 in a critical election year. We've sent out a bit of a broader reach to people who are joining our organization and our activity. They've seen us on YouTube, they've run into us in political activities, and we intend to make this at a bi-weekly, at least, organizing event through the midterm elections. So what we're going to do tonight is the following. I'm going to open it up with a sort of general overview of why we think what we're doing is a little bit different from what a lot of Republican parties, MAGA groups, and others do as you get into the hot phase of an election. I'm sure many of the people on this Zoom call have been involved in elections. You know how many moving parts there are in terms of getting out the vote, election integrity, door knocking, stuffing envelopes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As we get closer to the elections, we will probably try and provide people some resources and some guidance in terms of those aspects of the election. But where we're coming at it is very much from the standpoint of top-down policy. For my friends who are on this call from Michigan, you know that I ran for coalition's vice chair of the Michigan Republican Party on a pretty clear theme, which was Donald Trump will not be at the top of the ticket in 2026. We have to make sure that his policies are at the top of the ticket in 2026. And that presents two challenges. First, you actually have to have candidates who want to put Donald Trump's policies at the top of their organizing. But number two, and I think this is a bit of a larger challenge, what really is the revolutionary nature of those policies? And how well do people understand what it is that Donald Trump and his team are doing? And here's the next challenge. How do you effectively communicate that in the course of an election campaign, in the course of this political battle in front of us? What I want to start with, and I'm going to give a bit of an overview, and then we're going to bring in a couple of candidates from Texas who I think have taken up this challenge of how do you communicate President Trump's ideas in the course of an election campaign. After they speak, I'm going to discuss where we want to go in the future with these discussions. Then we're going to open it up for questions, discussion, and so on. Let's start really from the top down because, again, I think we have a very happy challenge. And that is President Trump is tearing down an old, failed system piece by piece. And he is actually constructing and building a new system, both strategically and economically. Or another way to put it, you get a lot of chatter out there of people who say, I'm frustrated with Trump because I voted because I wanted to see people in handcuffs, or I voted for this, that, or the other thing. Well, I voted for an economic and a strategic revolution, and I think I'm getting one. I know I'm getting one. And that's what I believe we actually have to communicate. Because what this administration is doing is taking what is called globalism or the post-war rules-based order, or as those of you who are following our videos and discussions on Promethean Action, the modern-day British imperial system. President Trump and his team are taking on the fact that we have been operating under really an alien system, which has entangled us more and more and more in this post-war period. Its characteristics have been perpetual wars, free trade, which has gutted our middle class, our working class, our manufacturing capacity, and created a nation where you have the very rich and everybody else, and nothing really in between, which is what used to characterize our nation. The other aspects of these, let's call them imperial or globalist policies, have been the insane environmental policies, and not to mention all of the cultural insanity. But I think at the core of it, what you're actually dealing with, again, is an economic system, a globalist economic system, which has been based on the principle of, I would say, financial parasitism. In other words, you have these powerful financial and economic interests, most of which are not really based in a nation. They're based above a nation. There are nations involved. A lot of the power is in the City of London. We see our own sort of version of this with Wall Street, with the bigs here in the United States, big pharma, big tech, big ag, big whatever. But these are not really national institutions. These are transnational, supranational, globalist institutions who act for the benefit of what President Trump has called a global financier elite. And he is taking that down and beginning to restore principles of national economic sovereignty and rebuilding our manufacturing independence, our energy independence, our workforce, and so on. The big marquee elements, what he has already implemented, which is beginning to carry out this transformation, is obviously number one, the tariffs, which are being used obviously for a foreign policy side, but most importantly, are being used to create the conditions where the companies are coming back home, whether they're the auto companies, the aluminum companies, the steel companies, the pharmaceutical companies, and I know we could probably use a little less of that, but we still do need some of it, but actually bringing our manufacturing back home. And also the way that he's used tariffs to mobilize massive investment flows into the United States, which are rapidly coming to the level of $20 trillion of other countries directly investing in building things here in the United States. Then one thing which is quite often missed by people, and I think this is extremely important, this was in the big beautiful bill, is full expensing for new factory construction, where if you decide to build a new factory, a new plant, a new warehouse in the United States, you take 100% of the expenses off of your taxes in the first year. You don't amortize it over 15 years. This is a huge boom. And by the way, that provision ends in 5 years. In other words, the Trump administration is saying to these companies, get your butts back here and start building now, and you're going to get a tremendous benefit for it. Obviously, we know the impact of deregulation and the huge energy boom, not just drill, baby, drill with our fossil fuels, but extremely important, clearing the path for a nuclear renaissance in the United States where we start building rapidly nuclear power plants, including small modular nuclear reactors. And then I'm sure people saw the delightful announcement about a month ago that Truth Social Media has merged with a fusion company to put this country on the cutting edge of a fuel source which is almost unlimited in terms of its potential and in terms of the impact it's going to have in bringing down the cost of energy. Now, what's the impact of this already? I do have a chart. Some of you have probably seen it because it was in the email. It's a chart which shows factory starts just in November. And there were like 133 factories, 199 warehouses, and some number in between those two, I believe, which was processing plants, which added up to 400 new facilities in November alone where ground was broken. And we don't have the December numbers yet, but we're going to keep people apprised of the impact of this. I think you can see that the impact of this is one of the things that was announced today, which is unemployment claims in the United States have dropped to a historic level of less than 200,000. Someone can correct me, but I think this might be the lowest in, well, certainly decades. I can't remember how many decades. The impact is already being felt. Wages are starting to go up in areas of manufacturing, transportation, and especially mining had a big boost. There are a lot of resources on the White House website. I recommend that people just pay attention to what the White House is putting out. They're actually giving a lot of very useful material for you to show people the impact on this. So that's a very broad stroke of this. And I will say, if you're out there campaigning or you're out there organizing, there's a certain use value to being able to say, look what's happening to unemployment. Look at how many factories are being built around the country. Look at this figure. Look at that figure. But that's only, I think, going to get you so far. I think what is very exciting is that we already have candidates around the United States who are out there thinking about how can I translate this transformation that is taking place. And it is a transformation, which is why people should really think hard that you're communicating something new to people. Don't try and put it in your old terms. Try and give people a sense of a door to the future opening up. And when you're trying to communicate something new, you have to be a little bit more creative and a little less formulaic. So I want to invite our friends from Texas to raise their hand. Helen, well,
Yes.
yes, I'd like you to introduce yourself to the group, tell them where you're running for office, the character of the area you're running in, which I think is very challenging, who you're running against, and what my friends in Texas have told me in terms of how you are bringing one aspect of President Trump's vision for reviving our manufacturing into your campaign. So take about 10 minutes and take it away.
Okay. So my name is Helen. Let me see if I can get myself on this video.
Yeah, we'd like to
Is
see
it
you.
working?
Yes.
Oh, hi. Um, okay. Thank you all so much for your time and patience. I am so excited to hear about your focus on manufacture, reshoring, and reindustrialization of America. I want to say I finally settled on this. I have two top issues, okay? This is my twin issues. This is one of those two twins, is skilled trade job training. The reason I eventually settled on this is really inspired by the Houstonians here, Mr. and Mrs. Lance, Mr. and Mrs. Bowen, and Belinda and her husband, Craig, is last election in November, where we had failures, is when people are moving away from Trump's industrial policies or economic policies, okay? We've ran the course with free trade. We've outsourced all of America's industrial base. We have to take a hard look. At some stage, even the military parts has to be imported. So the message I got from Trump 2024 is we need to be America first. The message I got from last November, where we had failures, is those people did not highlight or pursue Trump's industrial policy, which is to reindustrialize America and manufacturing reshoring. And he has already brought in so much money from overseas. And here in Texas, we have a lot of jobs. Apple is here. NVIDIA is here. Google will be here. They are spending $60 billion, Eli Lilly. So what's missing are the skilled workers. I tell you, Tesla gave Austin Community College $300 million to train its workers. We need electricians. All over Texas, the industrial grid must double its size to meet the future need of this AI-directed manufacturing. So I'm very excited to settle onto this issue. And in terms of training, I tell you, last November, proposition number 1, it passed by 70% of Texas voters that we gave $1 billion, close to $1 billion for technical school education. So all of this money is being very well funded. And I think the voters, regardless of party affiliations, are on board with this issue. So what's missing here, I think just somebody going to the door to door to door to talk about it, especially in the district where I'm running. So my name is Helen Zhou. I'm running on the Republican ticket for state representative in House District 137. Where is 137? Some of the features, it's in the heart of Houston, but some of its features, it's also ground zero for immigrants. It's like the Ellis Island of New York here in Gulfton. And it runs through Chinatown, Sharpstown, where we live, and West Chase, where a lot of apartments, 72% of all people live in apartments. I think all over Texas, 72% of people live in houses, actually. But my area is a little bit different. And why do I want to focus on this area? Two other things define my area, District 137. We have 25 House districts in Harris County alone in Houston, okay? And I am one of those 25. And we have 150 House representatives all over Texas. So this is the most populous area of Texas. So my area has two most dangerous zip codes by FBI, on the FBI's list as two most dangerous zip codes in the country. In the country. My second thing is 70% of the residents live in apartments, and 70% of all residents speak another language other than English at home. I think we are being rated as the most diverse area in the country, in the US, more so than New York City. Okay, so when I landed onto this thing, it's defined by high crime and low income. Per capita income in this area where I'm running is 30 to 40% below Harris County average. I used to think it's because we have a lot of retired people, but I looked at the data. We have no more or no less retired population than any other districts in Houston, about 12%, okay? So I'm running on that particular issue because income is too low, crime is high. When I said, oh, my two issues are crime and a skilled trade, people laugh. People say, well, these two are related. High crimes, low income, high crimes. But one thing that's guiding me is this. Here in Houston, if you are an 18-year-old graduating with a skilled trade certificate, just today, okay? Here in Houston, you can go to Houston ISD, Independent School District. You can attend Houston ISD free of charge, and you can attend a nearby community college free of charge to learn a trade in the afternoon or something. So there are high school kids graduating with a skilled trade certificate, and coming out of those programs, they can make $50,000 to $80,000 a year right away. Okay. And what I said is Texas voters are on board with this issue. It's nothing new. It's not like it's novelty. People are against it. People are for it. Okay. So I think our challenge, and me and Mr. Lance and Mr. Bowen, we went to visit the advanced training manufacturing training facility here in Houston. Is the challenge here is the awareness. It's usually with these kind of skilled trade, well, I become a firefighter because my father is a firefighter. I become an electrician because my father is an electrician. So a lot of these kids in these schools do not have that. So we need to make these programs available to them, making them aware of it, and really to expose this to them. I don't know if Evelyn, if Mr. Lance or Mr. Bowen will be speaking, but we visit. It's amazing. One of the things that they said to us was they used to teach prison population before they come out of jail. Before they were being released from jail, they were given 8 weeks of vocational training. And those prisoners could come out of prison earning $25 an hour. And that's amazing. And that's some years ago. It's not, today 25 is not worth as much as, 5, 10 years ago. And that's a starting point. People have a skill set they can be proud of, and employers are looking for those people. So one of the things in my area is the democratic rule. My general election opponent, Zhou, is the current Democratic Caucus chair of Texas. Okay. So this is a handout complex, a handout industry. Okay. You know, we have a Baker Ripley here. Okay. We have a situation where the Settlement Association president's making $400,000 a year. And the average per capita income elsewhere in this area is like 27,000. We need to change that non-productive complex of handouts, NGO money, government subsidies into a productive workforce. And I've even talked to the Muslim community. I'm going to go to talk to them. They want to work. I've been told that they want to work, okay? They want to work, but they do not always have the skill set to be hired by Tesla, to be hired by NVIDIA, to be hired by Foxconn or Eli Lilly. Okay, so they need to go through training. We're going to be looking into the barriers. Is this awareness issue? Is this a language barrier that you cannot take these classes? Or is this because most of it can be covered by scholarships and grants? So I think this is critical because we need to get this area to not handouts, but skills, not dependency, but opportunities. This is how families get ahead. Every time I talk about skill trade job training, everybody trying to, bring more jobs to here. I said, no, the jobs are here, thanks to our governor, thanks to Trump, this reindustrialization of America. Now we need to bring those skills to able bodies who can work. I really believe immigrants come to this country because they want to have a good life for themselves, because they want to help build America. I think this thing is going to work out great. I tell you, my general election opponent, Jing, we are going, if I survive this primary, I do have a primary opponent, so I'm in the middle of it. We are going to hold Mr. Jing accountable for his voting records on open borders, criminals walking free. He voted against every general election integrity measures we're trying to pass. We're going to hold him accountable on transgender sex surgeries on children, boys and girls bathrooms. Just unproductive stuff. So every time I go to a door, I'm door knocking. People are very receptive to this. People agree with me. And occasionally I knock on the door of somebody who is a skilled worker. They love this. They said, I'm a good example of this. I knocked on the door of a 23-year-old. He bought a house when he was 22. I said, how did you manage this? Because he is a mechanic worker. Then he owns 1 or 2 mechanic shops fixing cars. He has a house, a standalone home in the midst of Houston, in Houston city proper, in Sharpstown neighborhood. And he is looking to buy more. And I have other people I talk to say, this is a real problem because today people cannot work with their hands. They cannot work with tools either. So I think all of this, I think it's going to set our country on the right path again and set these people free because they are going to have skills instead of having to depend on these politicians to give them another handouts. That's all.
All right, introduce yourself, Alex, in terms of where you're running, also in Texas, and let us know what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. Well, everyone, thank you for having me. My name is Alex Hale, and I am running for U.S. Congress here in Houston's 7th Congressional District. And there's actually a lot of overlap with Helen's district, and so we actually share many of the same constituents right here in our part of the city. And it's an honor and a privilege to be here, and I look forward to talking more about, continuing what Helen touched on, and talking more as well on the framing. We talked about how in 3 years, President Trump will be finishing up, and we will be moving on with a party who won't have President Trump at the helm. And so when we think about his policies and we think about the future, How do we frame these pro-America, pro-middle class policies and issues and continue to socialize and circulate this message with our constituents, with people all around the country to continue that a new administration doesn't change things back to the globalist way that it's often been. And so when we think about framing things, so much of the old system has been torn down, and we need to continue building this new system where these companies don't take advantage of us anymore. We talked about, it's already been said, how so many jobs in the globalist system were sent overseas. To Helen's point, there are so many jobs that people could go to Houston Community College right now and learn how to do for free. And yet those jobs were taken away from the lower middle class constituents in our district, in both Helen and I's district, and sent to someplace abroad where those jobs can and those wages can help some country that we will never even go to or know much about. And it's a shame that so often the middle class is capital in the big corporate machine and that we get leveraged. And so when we think about how do we continue to bring jobs back, how do we continue to shift the Overton window on building big things here, building factories here, bringing jobs back here, we have to help people realize that this is pro-American worker. This is pro-local communities. We don't need to help other citizens around the world get American jobs. We need to help Americans get American jobs from American companies. I think often when it comes to framing and even continuing to push President Trump's agenda, we need to help people realize that he is doing this for the middle class. He's doing it for us who often don't come from some background of the silver spoon in our mouths. You actually have to work by the sweat of our brow. Like he is doing that for us. And I think a lot of people want to play red versus blue politics and say, oh, President Trump, he only cares about Republicans. No, he cares about Americans. He is doing this for whether you're red or blue, he cares about Americans and he cares about American communities. And when you frame it that way, even going back to Susan's point earlier, that with the big, beautiful bill, it's now encouraging CapEx investment for businesses to actually invest in the United States and get a tax benefit when they invest heavily here. That helps every kind of American. Doesn't matter what your social issues or policies are. That helps every American here. Who can't get behind that? I think it's very much a thing that we can continue to run with this baton that Trump is just pro-American, social issues aside. But in talking about some of the other candidates in my race, just because I know that Helen touched on her race and I'll touch on mine, the only other prominent, there are three candidates in my race, but one of the more prominent candidates is a candidate that on his website and in his stated goals is trying to bring jobs and increase free trade with developing countries such as the UAE. And you sit there and think, my gosh, what are we doing here? Why are we talking about the UAE? I don't want jobs in the UAE. I want jobs here. I don't care about jobs in the UAE. I don't care about jobs in Saudi. And it's really disappointing to see that someone is running on, I mean, that's stated on his website, that that is what he is going for. That's not pro-American. This candidate's family as well has donated tens of thousands of dollars to some pretty prominent Act Blue campaigns that just, of course, directly undermines what President Trump is trying to build here in the Republican Party. The other candidates in the race, one really doesn't have a website, and then another candidate has not made it out of the primary before and trying to face the sitting rep. It doesn't look promising for some of the other candidates going for this. You might say, Alex, you look young. I am young. I'm 27 years old. This is my first time running. But going back to these pro-America policies, going back to the issues that Helen and I see in our district of crime and of people that could be upskilled to get some great middle-class jobs, especially with President Trump giving these tax benefits for companies to invest in our community. This is my future. I'm young, but this is my future that's at stake. And so I'm here because I don't want my future and my American dream to dim. I want the same American dream and the same opportunity that my ancestors have had. And in recent years, with the push towards globalism, that has gotten dimmer and dimmer. Jobs have been going to places like the UAE and other countries all over the world. And I want those jobs here. I want those jobs for my kids and my neighboring families and my district. And so it's a beautiful thing to see what President Trump has been doing. And again, another thing to think about too is we have to be independent. I want to remind you of, I don't know how many of you are history nerds. I love history. I want to remind you of what happens when the world gets so interconnected that it's fragile.
Yes.
Think about World War One. Right before World War One, the world was more connected than it had ever been. And yet it fell apart. The house of cards collapsed. That fragility bred a black swan event. And it bred a big war. And as Susan said, we don't need more wars. We don't need more wars that are sucking up our tax dollars that are paid to the government that could be going towards more useful things to use here domestically and at home. And so this is just something to keep in mind that, again, to be pro-American, no need to meddle in foreign wars, no need to become too interconnected that one fuse being blown breaks everything, every appliance in the house. We need to have stable grids. We need to, like Helen said, we need to invest in our grid, especially here in Texas. We need to continue investing in nuclear projects here on our shore. We don't need to do this anywhere else. It gives us a stability and it gives us an ability to not be dependent on anyone else. And again, when you think about even, let's zoom out to even geography, the United States, the New World, is on its own hemisphere. We are able to be a hegemon, our own empire here across the Atlantic and across the Pacific from everyone else. And we have a huge opportunity to invest in infrastructure where we can continue to be a dominant American empire, and we don't need anyone's help. We help and give jobs to a lot of Americans when we decide to invest in that American empire and not just pander to Fortune 500 companies that want to try and get better margins on their business that work all over the world.
Correct.
We want to focus on here.
Thank you, Alex. That's very inspiring. I think this is very exciting. And one of the challenges I'd like to throw out to other people on the call, because it especially struck me when you guys are talking about your district, Helen, you're talking about the demographics in your district. These are the kind of areas where the Democrats think they have it locked up.
Yes.
But if you go into these areas, find those vocational schools, or if you don't have, here's where I think we can have a big impact. If you don't have a vocational program, a skilled trades program, reach out to the Labor Department. They have a program. They are committed to creating 1 million skilled trades apprenticeships in the United States in the first year of Trump's administration. I can't remember how far along they are, but they're very far along. But imagine going into here in Michigan, Detroit, Flint, some of the more battered areas, and actually bringing Trump's the Labor Department's skilled trades, vocational vision into these areas and say to the people in these communities, this is what we're doing for your children. That is going to get a whole lot farther than a couple of slogans about whatever. There's a hunger for this. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal a couple of weeks ago that in Blue, Massachusetts, their skilled trades and vocational training schools have waiting lists of over a year of people trying to get into these things. Because I think people are beginning to get the sense once again, we have a future. We can build things. And my children could actually have the kind of job where one income could raise a family. That is going to resonate so strongly in the swing states and in places like Texas. So I think you guys have really pioneered something, and I think it's extremely important.
So for me, I lived in this area for more than 20 years. We have the same, Democrats have been running this area forever. The number one issue is crime. Maybe I'm not being charitable to them. The way they deal with crime is like swatting flies. Oh, here's an issue, let's report them. The police came, the police left, and then life went back to usual.
Right.
It doesn't change. But I know I'm an immigrant myself. I came to this country when I was 15. I went to high school, I went to college, graduate degree and everything. I had a professional career, so I did well. So I know the way you progress eventually is you need to have a skill set. It brings confidence, self-esteem, it brings income. And from there, you can have a family, you can buy a home, you can participate in American economic life and in society in general. You need to be a responsible member. People can get a job here making $15, $17 an hour. I mean, there are those jobs. You can work at McDonald's, but it's not enough to support a family to do anything. The other thing is I work in real estate. This is my general observation. I live in, this is a totally a working class neighborhood. If you have a guy at home who is a skilled trade labor, who is an electrician, even a painter, okay, contractor, their rent is never late. They always pay their rent on time. They have a stay-at-home wife just working as a machinist. Not an extravagant lifestyle, but they can make a good living for themselves. Living in a one-story single-family home inside the city of Houston. So I know if you have a job, if you bring forth skill sets to that job, you will do really well in Houston. And I know people, this city really need people who can reliably work and do good work. Those people will always be in demand, at least from what I could observe in Houston. For people who want to get ahead, and I am very encouraged by the statistics, well, while our income is 30 to 40% less than Harris County average, which is where Houston is, but we also have a large group of people are immigrants, so they want to do well. So here's the opportunity. Trump and Governor Abbott have brought the jobs to Texas. They just need to have the skill sets to do the work. And all of those things can be learned. And that's what I learned in America. If you want to have a skill, you have the will and the means to, and not even the means, just, the will to do it, and you can do it. I'm telling you, HCC, we went to visit them. They are offering night classes at 10 o'clock and they get filled up. And those welders, before they can graduate, they're hired by SpaceX. SpaceX, of all people, of all places, of all companies. So that's why, that's from observation. We have 20-some-year-old welders making 6 figures a year. I mean, not as a straight salary, but they can have, hourly pay, overtime. After a while, they move into a supervisor's position. So they do really well for themselves. They don't have a housing problem. Their rent is always on time. So we can talk about housing affordability, but one aspect, maybe 30% of a housing affordability is people are not making enough. But yet at the same time, we have employers not being able to find the right kind of workers. At least that's here in Houston. Now, if you want to become an electrician, CenterPoint will pay you to train you to become an electrician. You get paid to become an electrician. And they make $50 an hour, 75. So that's why I'm so excited to hit onto this topic. And I've tested at the doors. These are hardcore Republican doors. I think the most negative comment I got was, oh, I thought they are already doing it in HISD. HISD, Houston Independent School District, they have not been doing it. They do not have a vocational program inside their high school, so they do not know. Everywhere else, people are happy. So that's right, we need to be doing this.
Great answer. And just to continue off what Helen shared, I want to start with, let's talk about HISD and the public schools with regards to your question of why jump in. 60% of third grade children in our public schools here in Harris County, but also within our district as a subset of that, cannot read at a third grade level. Over 60% of third graders cannot read at expected third grade level. That is an epidemic. That is not just a problem. That is an epidemic issue that we are facing, that our lack of investment in our children, in our communities, is going to lead to decay. Children have got to learn how to read. Jobs have got to exist for people, whether you go to college or you don't. There need to be opportunities that companies can offer They have these huge office buildings here. They need to create offerings and opportunities for people back at home. And the reason, again, why I jumped in, I work as an energy consultant. That's my job. I work with lots of large cap, mid cap energy companies in Houston and around the world. I understand the energy supply chain pretty well. And we often get brought in to figure out what's broken. We're a doctor for companies. We often get brought in when there's a huge issue, there's a fire, and they say, we need you to help us think on your feet and figure it out. It could be an operational problem, it could be a financial problem, but we're fixers. That's what we do. Looking at the state of affairs in our city and in our state, in our district, there's a lot that needs to be fixed. And our sitting rep, if you look up Representative Fletcher, the opponent who I plan to beat in the general, she is tone deaf on issues of crime, on issues of unemployment, on issues of job opportunities in the city, on issues of education. She doesn't say a word about it. And so it would be a sin of omission for me to sit out and sit in my private sector job and not do anything about this for my peers. Again, a lot of people my age that are just looking to get a good job, to be able to pay rent, maybe someday buy a home. I mean, I don't own a home. I hope to own a home someday, but I'm scrapping to try and one day own a home. And there are millions of people out there in the country like me, but many in our city that just simply want the same thing. That's why you jump into a race like this. That's why we focus on fundamental principles like bringing jobs back here, upskilling workers, not letting the middle class die.
We'll use that to just absolutely push our stuff. You can go to the Promethean PAC website. You can order copies of this. You can also download a printer-friendly version of it. And let me just say, this is midterm half-pager number 1.
Yes.
I think what we will do for the second one is grab some of the, not a huge amount of facts and figures, but grab a few of the most powerful images of what the administration has already done in terms of factory starts, wage growth, and things like that. Put that on one side of a new pamphlet so people have a certain visceral sense. Okay, Trump said he was going to make this the party of working people and producers. Well, he's already doing it, and give some of the evidence. And I think perhaps on the other side, go through how he's taking on the big cartels. You know, he's gone after the housing industry and said to the big financial interests, we're not going to let you guys buy up single family homes. Corporations buy up single family homes. He's obviously going after health insurance and saying, I want to take the money away from them and give it to the people. He's gone after big ag. He's gone after a number of the bigs. So I think maybe our next half pager will have a little bit more in terms of, okay, here's what Trump has already done. But in the meantime, get this one and get out there and organize with it. One of the things we want to do, and it's just going to be a question of figuring out what the modality for doing this is, set up some kind of platform where people within a state can be in touch with each other. And we actually start to build up a kind of strike force in each state. Right now, we're very much in the policy end of this, making sure that we're sharpening how we can get across the revolutionary transformation that President Trump is bringing about. As we get farther into this process, there are other tools that people can get involved in terms of get out the vote efforts, door knocking, other kinds of things. We're going to be a little bit closer to the actual electoral period, although I know for our friends in Texas, if I'm not mistaken, your primary is in March, right? So you're pretty far along into this process. You're one of the earlier ones in the country. There may be other tools that you can do just by using your telephone at a certain point. This is round 1 of kind of kicking this off, seeing where we are in the country, seeing where we have concentrations. Just so people know, we are on the ground with actual physical organizations. In Michigan, I think you've figured that out by now. Texas, you've probably figured that out by now. California, and we've got a small but very important presence, believe it or not, in the blue state of Washington State. And we've got an experienced veteran organizer in Florida who actually did a post office deployment today, went out with a pro-Trump table. We've got people who are active in the Republican Party, in MAGA organizations throughout the country. And part of this is give people a network to be in touch with. I know many people on this call are active in the Republican Party. I'm active in the Republican Party. And we're seeing a transformation of the party in various parts of the country. But there's also a certain limitation because the parties have to run with rules and Robert's rules and this, that, and the other time. And it takes up a lot of your time, and it's necessary for those people who want to be active in that way, do so. But there's another whole side to this, which is just get out there and directly engage the American population with big ideas. And that's where we want to try and give people a place to come in order to organize. I think it's been a good first start.